Can those on YouTube let us know if you can hear now or not? And thank you for waiting on Instagram. Again, if those on YouTube can just let us know whether audio is coming through now. Wonderful. Thank you so much. So an example of...
Maybe we should give a...
Yeah, we were just sharing how awareness, this way I identify myself, can in very subtle ways affect attitudes, and it's happening so under the radar we're not even aware, or we just assume this is the way it is. It's just so, I wouldn't say insidious, but very, very incognito. I remember once being on an airplane flight, and, it's the usual thing that used to happen, that you would be on the flight, and at the very beginning, I don't know what they're called, maybe there's the pilot and then the first officer, and usually it's the first officer on behalf of the pilot comes on and shares, okay, so welcome to this flight from so-and-so and so to so-and-so. Your attendants these are their names, and your pilot today will be so-and-so, and our flight path is to go over here, and at this time you can look and see this and that. And then at the end they say, and then she'll be able to land at this time. And I'm like, she? And I didn't even know the whole time, because I have a certain attitude based on my awareness, certain attitude that flight pilots are male. And I didn't even know, until the word, and then she'll land the plane at this time. I had a whole scenario of what's going on in that cockpit. And, it's just, there's so many, this is a very gross example. There are so many that's, we have this structure, this schema that we call awareness, and it will shape this tree of attitudes that very much affect our beliefs, our feelings, the quality of interaction. And we say attitude creates atmosphere because of those feelings. So it has a huge impact, and people can actually feel it. Even if we're saying certain things, the attitude goes far deeper, more powerful, and others can feel the attitude.
Since attitude is something that's quite subtle, awareness is quite subtle, and I'm not sure, it's not necessarily about a textbook definition, but can you really explain what attitude really is?
Attitude, I always really think of it as my position relative to something else. That's really sort of the textbook definition that I wander around with. So we're constantly coming into interaction with people, positions, possessions, and I have a certain position or stance relative to these different things. And it's just so, again, and we sometimes have a little self-corrective mechanism for those that we're able to catch. So we might be aware I have a certain attitude, maybe an attitude around people who wear glasses. And I might be consciously aware, so whenever I see someone with glasses, I have a certain internal position. It's like position paper towards people with glasses. I'm aware of it, so I can see it come up, and then I might correct myself. There's only a handful of attitudes that we are consciously aware of and able to self-correct. A gazillion that we are not aware of. So we don't self-correct, and they're imposing a certain force on us and how we make decisions and the feelings we have.
Now there's something that is mentioned in this study called sanskars. So for those of you who haven't taken the Raja Yoga course, we won't go into the depths of it, but we talk about the soul, that I have thoughts. and that I have a capacity to discern these thoughts, and this capacity of discerning and recognizing is a huge part in this study about reconnecting and recognizing this original me. But then there's this most subtle capacity, which is subconscious, that kind of drives habits. Can one say attitude is like sanskars?
Yeah, I would put it, because it's in that sort of subconscious realm. I would, and sanskars inform thoughts, so it's definitely part of that whole subconscious. One of the definitions I once heard for sanskars, which I really like and definitely connect to attitude, is the way I do things around here, my inner culture. So we always sort of have, when in Rome, do as the Romans do, the way I do things around here. So because of my awareness, I've created this whole inner culture, the way I do things around here. Very little of it is conscious, most of it's subconscious, and attitudes would be in there.
Thank you for clarifying. The reason why, because sometimes I find it's not so clear in terms of attitude and awareness, and all at the level of how am I needing to change inside. So if after a prolonged level of awareness that has shaped a certain stance that I have, I suppose when one is starting to address their awareness, that attitude can be quite long-standing, and it takes a while for that to shift.
Absolutely, and some even won't, because it becomes so entrenched, it starts to get confused with fact, that this is right, this way of thinking or this belief, so we won't even bother to change it. We just assume, we look back in horror at some of the attitudes that our forebears held, but they just took it as right, as fact. And so there was no reason to even change it.
But when it comes to actually, when you're saying when I become aware, I think you're using an example. I have a certain attitude towards those who wear glasses, for example. So in that sense, it's like this inner momentum of habit that creates certain feelings and certain thoughts. And you're like, oh, okay, I didn't notice that was going on. I had some sort of subtle awareness that was informing a certain kind of position. And now I want to change. Let's not go into like Raja Yoga yet, but just something is this aspect of attitude and trying to change it.
I actually think it is where Raj Yoga excels, actually. I don't know if it's possible, because Raj Yoga asks me to go a little deeper, to look underground. So we were talking the other day, and I use this example only, and hopefully it does not in any way, sort of disturb anyone, but because we were talking about it the other day and having experience with it in this birth anyways, which was the dance world, and specifically ballet. And ballet just, had so much of its roots in a certain culture, so that a certain, if you will, image or appearance started to be defined as a ballerina. And that included the color of the skin, the girth of the body, etc. And so if it went outside of that, it actually, there was a little attitude of lesser value. So we were talking the other day of, say, someone with a heavier girth or a different color skin, it would be seen as lesser value. It was very, very subtle. It was just assumed. And the only way you can actually move out of that, we were talking about a particular dancer who, due to some medical conditions, is in a heavier body. And I've seen them dance, and it fascinates me, because many, many can't get past the superficial, and not just lesser value, but actually bullying, very critical towards this dancer. But when I see this dancer, there is such a deep, we said sanskar, such a deep imprint on the soul of, we say dancing, but I say beyond that, just a lightness, an incredible lightness. So you actually see the power of the soul to transform the external. When they dance, they look very light on their feet, remarkably light on their feet. And so for me, I am I'm taking the feeling of the soul, I'm not, but that's Raj Yoga, which asks me to connect to what is eternal and experience what is eternal and literally see but don't see just the surface. That is really the only way to break through those attitudes. If I can, we say insight or third eye or below the surface or don't judge a book by its cover or whatever you want to call it. Being able, and not just on an intellectual level. That's not awareness. Awareness is I'm actually experiencing a different reality, a different paradigm, a different schema, very naturally. It's not just an intellectual exercise, so that my feelings and attitudes shift. It's very humbling.
So, the reason why I wanted us to put aside Raj Yoga for the moment was because for us to appreciate why it's so unique with Raj Yoga. Because you do hear of individuals say that they might have a certain attitude towards a certain culture, then they immerse themselves in that culture. Something shifts, perhaps. I can't say how deep it is. So when you I don't know if you've ever had that. Have you heard of others who've had that, or they might have a certain attitude towards, let's say, healthcare professionals with the kids that I have worked with cancer. And so in time, their attitude can shift, but there's certainly a difference. What is that difference? I'm not sure if you
I actually think that because when I was in my last year of high school, I was in an extremely multiracial population, just at a different school, and I did find that this was fascinating. This was before coming into Rajo, and I found it absolutely fascinating because there were some souls who they had different labels for everyone, but who seemed very pulled to connect to a certain culture which was different from the package, and it was very genuine. And I actually think that was still Raj Yoga, that they had what we call those deep sanskars, or deep imprint, that was really, even without knowing it, Raj spirituality was operating. Those deep sanskars were really pulling them to connect to another culture despite the package. So if it's otherwise, it's not genuine. When I saw it so deeply in those kids, but I see the other side as well that you're sharing without the benefit of sanskars or a spiritual study, that again, intellectually, I know I should feel a different way. I should have a different attitude intellectually because I want to be a compassionate or open-minded person, but I'm not able to actually override the feelings. If we're honest, we can still see them operating. That's where we see what happens when I don't have a spiritual practice that gets right to the seed. I know I should have a different attitude, different feelings, and I try to think my way into it, but it's not really shifting at the level of feelings deep down. They're still there.
I have an example, which may not be a great example, because it actually was, to my knowledge, it was a fictional story. But usually I know that some of these stories are created where they do a bit of research. So it was a well-known film, but it was this individual who was grown up in a family where the father was quite discriminative towards a certain race. So he grew up with that. Fast forward through time, he committed some crimes, landed up in jail, and was having to be in the laundry room to do his duties while he was in jail, and spent a lot of time with one other individual who was of that race, that there was that attitude of discrimination. And he grew to have like a very deep friendship with him. So the reason why I say it's a bad example, because it wasn't a real story, so that I don't know how much weight there is in this story I'm using, but is it possible that the attitudes and feelings could just change for that individual and not necessarily for all of them? Like, I should have these feelings.
Yeah. One of the cornerstones of Raj Yoga, which connects with your story you just shared, one of the cornerstones is this formula or concept that there is a certain understanding that will activate our innate spiritual awareness. Raj Yoga is saying we all are souls, not just some of us, but all of us are souls. Deep down, we have that knowledge or experience of being a soul because we are one, but we have forgotten. So there's a understanding that can activate that spiritual awareness. So understanding plays a huge part in Raj Yoga. People often joke, wow, for a place that's dealing with meditation, you certainly talk a lot like this interview because of the role of understanding of spiritual knowledge. So in your story, what that person had when incarcerated was he was exposed to a different understanding. You said friendship, but actually it was a different understanding. He was in some ways moving into spirituality. He was becoming blind to the superficial and awakening to what's under the skin. And so there's an understanding, because there is within each of us a receptivity to spiritual understanding. For some, it starts to emerge earlier than others, and we start to seek out spiritual understanding. But it's there in every one of us because we are souls. So the right key can unlock. Maybe it's a Raj Yoga course. Maybe it's some strange experience in jail, whatever the case, because we hear of these different stories, and it's just unlocking something innate in all of us.
I greatly appreciate you sharing that. Ultimately, and it is something of a spiritual shift, even though that we might not actually be very cognizant of it, even if that might be happening to any of us and we haven't taken the course. But it helps us, I feel, to pare down to what's really actually happening. And there is always that common denominator, even though we're not aware.
Yeah, I think if we sifted through all these stories of someone having a radical shift in attitude and what was the pivotal moment, it always seems, we might say empathy, we might say friendship, but some innate wisdom, some inner wisdom is what we call it in Raj Yoga. Some innate or inner wisdom is awakened through an experience, and that innate or inner wisdom is spirituality, spiritual in nature. When we say spiritual, we mean not physical. So we're experiencing something that's beneath the skin, if you will, beneath the surface, something very subtle and deep. Is being activated, or we're understanding, experiencing. So we use words such as friendship or empathy or getting beneath the surface.
When you were sharing about, just that attitudes, probably more closer to sanskars, all that subconscious, that there's a certain momentum that has been habituated because of a certain awareness that's just there all the time in certain situations. When we're talking about Raja Yoga, though, is that then allow me then to perhaps move a step further for those attitudes to shift permanently? Because if these sanskars, we're talking about these subconscious aspects, when they're so deeply habituated, who knows that they can still come up.
Yeah, the beauty of Raj Yoga is it's not hit and miss. So I don't have to wait till I'm incarcerated in jail.
Yes. And will that stay all the time?
No, it's very formalized, but it also has a mechanism which we call yoga that helps to, if you will, dissolve those temporary or body conscious attitudes I've accumulated over time when I forgot I was a soul. So it really helps to clean. There's a little bit of a clean up on aisle 5 with Raj Yoga. It cleans up a lot of stuff so that just the eternal or innate remains and the temporary dissolves. And so there's no, there's not that concern that it might suddenly pop up again or reemerge. So that's the beauty. It's a clear methodology rather than hit and miss. And again, as we've mentioned in the past, and not violent either. I'm not going to have these different attitudes beaten into me, if you will.
Would you say that the shift can be quite invisible and quite slow? And is that a bad thing?
I think it's definitely a different timing for every person, every soul. And I think it's it's important to respect that, because otherwise we might try to compare rush and become dishonest in the nature of the shift. Again, I'm trying to sort of prove that my attitudes are shift, or prove that I've become a global citizen and very open-minded, and deep down nothing's really changed. So I think to appreciate, respect one's own timing, to trust the method is the main thing, that it does work, to really trust it, and to be very honest in my practice of it, and respect my timing, keep a good eye on myself in terms of the honesty with which I'm studying.
So when you were sharing, though, that, because attitude's very, very much underground, awareness is very much underground. However, at least I can be cognizant that there is an awareness I need to water. Would it be that because attitude is quite subtle, would one have to be looking at the level of thoughts and responses, reactions, behavior, to see if there really is a shift going on?
Yeah, I think what we ultimately are suggesting is, if I notice attitude, and it will present in feelings and thoughts. So if I notice that there are certain thoughts and feelings which indicates I have what we call a body conscious, or attitude based on superficial, this is simply feedback. And this is the beauty of Raj Yoga, because someone might say, okay, I've noticed these attitudes, and then they get a little bit violent. Stop having those attitudes. You shouldn't have those attitudes, but they're still kind of there. So the beauty of Raj Yoga is it tells me what to do without violence to address it. It says, check your awareness. So we always keep coming back to awareness. The attitudes, the vision, the actions are all simply feedback. I am not in a spiritual awareness at this time, so it's beautiful. It's nothing to feel bad about. It's good feedback. I know what I need to do, rather than sort of tussle and fight with the attitudes or the thoughts and feelings. I simply say, very honestly, okay, I've got a really body-conscious attitude here right now. This is great feedback, but I am not in a spiritual awareness, knowing that's the seed of attitudes.
This may not, I'm not sure if it's possible to articulate, but I know that in fitness, physical fitness, you're always trying to create bridges for individuals to be able to have a certain posture. So it's quite interesting when you're sharing about it. I might notice I have certain attitudes about something, thoughts are coming up, and then I might be forcing change. Might be just trying to stop thinking this, and might be trying to insert different thoughts. Would you be able to discern, how do I know if it's then the awareness that I'm shifting, so that I'm addressing, this change inside, versus just trying to have different thoughts, and it's not really my awareness? Because awareness is quite subtle, and it has come up a lot in a lot of sessions, public programs, where individuals like, I don't know if I'm really working with the right inner mechanics for things to change.
I think this is really the essence of the study. Is the bottom line is, each of us, lesson 1 is awareness. I am a soul. And then what each of us does with that lesson will vary. Some will want to practice it all the time. So then they develop a great facility, like a light switch. That's simple. A great facility with shifting awareness. If I'm struggling with shifting awareness and not sure, it means I just don't practice it. Quite frankly. I mean, it's the same thing in physical fitness. There's some who, you'll be in a fitness class and it really fascinates me, spending a lot of time on alignment, and then we'll do functional exercises, standing exercises, whatever the case. And some, you can literally just walk towards them and see they start to shift. They just you're walking towards them. It's a signal, oh, she's coming to correct me. And they have the facility to completely realign themselves. Others, I'll sit their hands on adjustment and it's just not happening. And I know it's because they're not practicing it. They don't know what to do. They don't know how to practice. They don't know what it feels like. So it's it's really, even though we're given, literally, because we're so used to operating on the surface, to making adjustments on the surface, we almost can't seem to stop ourselves. So some will get that, you know what, stop the show, just figure out how to adjust the seed, the awareness. Some will figure that out and they'll make a program, they'll focus on it, they'll, on their off time, they'll do it. They're not just waiting for a crisis to try to do it, because they won't be able to. It certainly isn't going to happen in a crisis. So really, I'm saying this because this individual pictured behind us, the first student, understood this, and they were just, I can't say anything other than relentless in their practice of soul conscious. It was constant. They weren't waiting until there was a moment of, my attitude seems to be off, I better become soul conscious. That's really not how it works. I mean, yes, I need to use that feedback and shift, but for me to be able to do that, I need to be practicing soul consciousness a lot of practice of soul consciousness.
You're sharing, it was reminding me of the class on Sunday about, is my studying coming from the heart? Or is it coming out of convenience? Or is it coming at a time of crisis, actually? And actually, I felt when you were sharing, you were addressing all three. If there is really a deep love to really understand the truth of who I am. And the other two, it really, maybe at that is just not the right time.
Yeah, if I was to use the example of dance, there's so much. I think this is why ballet is spoken of as a pure form, only because, it's not to say it's superior, but only because there is such a remarkable emphasis on alignment. It's a crazy amount. So because of starting movement with that discipline, I really enjoy alignment, focusing in terms of movement. It's actually a joyful and enjoyable experience. It never feels like a waste of time. And I know I see others who want to spend no time on alignment. It was very funny because I was taking what we call mind-body class. It was a Pilates yoga fusion class. And the instructor at the beginning was starting with a bit of I won't say lecture, but a little bit of a talk. And you could just tell she was, when she said it, she says, I love these classes. And she's going deeply into what's to expect in the class. It's all alignment information. And you could just feel some were totally engrossed, some were glazing over until the class got going. And you saw what happened during the class. And she was giving alignment clues nonstop. Some knew what to do with it. Some had no idea what to do with that information. So some physically love alignment stuff. And the same with spirituality. Whereas others like the show. I do Warrior 3 and this, or Warrior 2. This is my concept of Warrior 2. There's none of the internal dynamics going on. There's just kind of the superficial show going on. And the same thing can happen in spirituality. I like the sweetness, the recycling, whatever my concept of spirituality is. But in terms of the deep, and we say incognito aspects that are true foundation of spirituality, there isn't as much interest, and that will become obvious when a crisis hits.
So we have hope if at least there's an interest to try to get that awareness operating versus more of the superficial things.
Yeah, there's a lot out there with spirituality about virtues and values. And that's actually more of the outer layer. Spirituality means the experience of being a spirit.
Well, perhaps next week we can explore a little bit more about that, because the word authenticity comes to mind when we're talking about attitude shift, real attitude shift, if I'm really focusing on awareness. And how that's different if I just focus straight on virtue. So thank you for joining. We're going to have a little reflection.
Attitude is so powerful. It shapes my position as I move through the world. And I will be exposed to a variety of scenes, situations, interactions. How to have a global, universal, all-accommodating approach. To be respectful to all. Royal, gracious to all. How do I have that gracious attitude in an unlimited way to all? I need to have just the right seed, just the right spiritual alignment. We call it a pure attitude. Purity and spirituality are interchangeable. A spiritual attitude is a pure attitude, and purity is based on truth. Am I aligned with the truth? The truth is, I am a soul, and every other human being is a soul as well. This is a perspective that unites us rather than divides. We are all souls, spiritual beings, brothers, with one single parent, the Supreme Soul. This awareness creates a pure, unlimited attitude, gracious and respectful to all, however they look, whatever they do, however they act, whatever their past. A gracious attitude towards all. Am I experiencing myself, honestly, to be a soul? There is instant detachment from all physical aspects when I say I am a soul. I become a neutral observer. No commentaries, no criticisms, no judgments. Very benign or neutral observer, very free, not entangled in limited attachments. What is my experience of being a soul? This point of spiritual living energy, eternal, and therefore separate from the package, the body, the image. Om Shanti.
Om Shanti. Thank you to those who've joined on Instagram and on YouTube. As always, we're welcoming you. If you have questions, comments, topics you'd like us to explore, you're welcome to type in the chat box. You're also welcome to email the center as well. I just want to share that I was very much looking forward to this topic because attitude is maybe just on the practical level, wanting things to shift, which is why I find it such an interesting topic. And so I know we have the next month coming up tomorrow. So I'll let Judy share what we have.
I am going to direct you to the website because there is so much, especially I know at the Northeast Center, which will also be online programming. So those often are Hindi-speaking programs, but there is quite a bit going on there. So do check our website. We will continue on the English-speaking side, continue with this interview with a Raj Yogi, continue with the drop-in meditations on Tuesdays and Thursdays and Sundays. We're trying to figure out about inner fitness on Saturdays. So if you have any feedback on that, please do email us. But again, check the website. We'll have some Raj Yoga workshops going on in the coming month. Those tend to be 75 to 90 minutes long. So it allows us to go a little more deeply into a single topic. So lots to explore. Please visit the website. And as always, thank you for joining us for this session. Your presence is invaluable. Om Shanti.